What's up, Ego Hackers? Welcome to CS Joseph Podcast. I'm your host, CS Joseph. Today's topic, we're going to be discussing female space, what female space is, and why it's important, and how women approach relationships with each other from an Octagram perspective. So, why is it even important to talk about this? It's because female space in today's day and age is completely broken. It's broken. It doesn't work. Female space is supposed to be this place where women can grow, where they can improve themselves and each other. And the differences between men and women kind of dictate how female space works, especially when compared to male space. Male space is all about giving. It's all about giving. And female space is all about taking. That's what it's really all about. And those are the big primary differences between the two spaces. We have male on male relationships or female on female relationships, okay? And a lot of people haven't a freaking clue about why it's necessary, even how this works. So I'm just going to break it down for you because it's like mega important for anyone to realize. But the problem with female space is if you don't have proper or healthy female space, what ends up happening is you have this societal disease that plagues every society ultimately. There's a lot of famous people who make comments about, for example, how like if women have the right to vote, then that basically means all the men and ultimately society itself would be subservient to women. There are many out there who would claim that about the United States of America right now. But women having the right to vote is not even actually the main issue. The main issue is that the societal problems that we have, in terms of feminism, because feminism, quite frankly, is, in my opinion, the number one enemy of a healthy society. A lot of people disagree with me on that. But it really comes down to female pragmatism. Female pragmatism, and I know I talk a lot about pragmatism from an Octagram perspective, but female pragmatism is a little bit different. I'm just generalizing with this label known as female pragmatism. But what it is the female compunction to compete with one another. They oftentimes do compete. And it's just like, for example, I have this memory one time. I was doing Science Olympiad, also on a science team, in high school. I was that nerdy kid, that nerdy teenager, trying to do good and make my dad proud in high school. And I did science team for a couple of reasons. To kind of further socialize myself and be social. Didn't really do it for girls or nothing. There really wasn't that very many interesting girls, contrary to my father's belief, because he would try to, encourage me to go after Miss Dreyfus, for example, and I'm just like, no. But I used to open up to my dad about women, but wasn't able to. But that's not the point. The point is that, I go into a classroom. This is like an after-school extracurricular activity. I go into a classroom, and there'd be just nothing but women in the classroom. I was the only male. And I noticed that the women would all compete with each other for my attention, even though I was not in a relationship with them. They didn't belong to me, but it just seemed like it was just happening just on the basis of biology alone, by the basis of psychology alone, that me as a man They were essentially competing with each other for my attention. And I noticed this. This actually ended up becoming something that was far more useful to me later, because I started to become aware of how the female psyche worked. I actually used a strategy that I developed from this interaction in this classroom to actually aid me in asking out a woman to prom who was my first love, basically. Her name was Molly, and she was a great woman. I had full intentions of marrying her. I wanted to keep her forever. Wanted to be one with her, not just in the biblical sense, but in every sense, essentially. I wanted to achieve oneness with that woman. I loved her dearly. This is just, teenage me, with these aspirations and whatnot. Little did I know that she had brain cancer at the time, and that brain cancer eventually claimed her life, which is really sad. But yeah, it claimed her life, and her roommate actually found her dead in the bathroom a little bit later, and that's a sad story. But what I noticed is that women will, if there's just one man present or a couple men present, they will compete with each other for the attention of that man or the men present. Because if a man is present, it's no longer female space, it actually becomes male space, technically. And just the presence of the man happens. I mean, we kind of see how this works in language. Like, for example, the Spanish language. Everyone's referred to as chicos. Even if it's one dude and 4 women, you would still refer to that group in the language as chicos. Even though there's more women than there's the men, so you wouldn't call them chicas. But because there is a chico among them, you call them chicas. No, you call them chicos. So that's just an example of like how it works like from a language perspective. But they would compete with one another, and women would often compete. So because of that, I arranged a situation where I was the only male present as I was targeting my first love, basically, in a bid to get her to be my prom date. She ended up having like a birthday thing, and I ended up invited to her home to play Twisted Metal on PlayStation. Twisted Metal 2 was her favorite video game. That was pretty awesome. But she had a lot of other girls with her. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is perfect. And then so we ended up playing like some game of spoons or something like that. Not a fan of that game, but I decided to play it anyway. So, and I arranged this thing where I ended up asking her out in front of, asking her to prom in front of all of her girlfriends, basically. Knowing full well how social pressure and women's need to compete with one another would be present, which would invariably increase the chances by probably 80% or more that she would say yes. And she did say yes. And so began our relationship. She is my first love. If you ever watch that movie, A Walk to Remember, my high school story with her is very similar to the plot line of that film. Recommend watching that film. It's a great film. Check it out. So, but yeah, and that's how I would leverage female psychological dynamics with each other to be able to gain an advantage as a man. And that's cool. A lot of men end up realizing that, and it's often taught in pickup artist circles to the benefit of men, basically. But here's the kicker. Why does female space even exist? It's necessary for women to have friends. When you're talking about sexual relationships, if a woman does not have healthy female relationships, this ends up becoming a big problem for them. It's a huge red flag. And why is it a red flag? Because of female pragmatism and their need to compete with one another, women actually provide a high level of accountability to each other that they don't realize. One of the biggest complaints that men have about women is that you can't hold a woman accountable. They're like immune to accountability. They'll gaslight you, or they'll rewrite history, or they'll twist everything you say to their own benefit, even to the point of dismissing you or just choosing to not listen to you. And it's a very frustrating experience as a man who's in a relationship with a woman, where that actually ends up being a big deal and can actually harm the relationship. She'll end up shit testing the man a lot, to the point where she is actually at risk of pushing the man away so far that he ends up breaking up with her or abandoning her or moving on. And it's sad. It's sad that this happens consistently. But female space exists as the ultimate accountability for women. Women need to be holding women accountable, because it's from other women that these women are able, because they see each other. Like men, sometimes we don't see women. We don't see their games that they play. We don't really understand the female psyche, but other women do. And what happens is that these women end up exposing each other to each other, and that creates accountability. Here's another example of female space. A man gets married to a woman, and then they have Thanksgiving dinner, and they're hosting Thanksgiving dinner, and he invites his parents to come over. So her mother-in-law is in there. She walks around the kitchen, strutting around, and she puts her finger in something that her daughter-in-law actually cooked. And she tastes it, and it tastes horrible. It tastes really bad. And then that mother-in-law gets in the face of her daughter-in-law, and it's like, what are you doing? You seem like you're half-assing this. You're half-assing this. Are you going to represent my son properly? Are you actually going to put in a real effort? Are you actually going to make a meaningful Thanksgiving dinner, or are you just going to be terrible? And then the daughter-in-law is like, oh shit, what the hell? And then in that moment, the mother-in-law then offers, hey, you know what? If you need help, just ask. And that's the key. That's the key to female space right there. Male space, by comparison, is a space of giving. Men give to one another. They give to one another all the time. Male space is all about unsolicited advice. Men consistently give each other unsolicited advice. That's how male space works. For example, let's say a bunch of men come together and they are going to a bar. And let's say one of the men is acting terribly. Let's say he actually gets a couple of the men kicked out of the bar because he drank too much and he's just being completely and utterly irresponsible. And there's some really bad consequences because they got kicked out of the bar. And then all those men have a reputation because they're hanging out with that man who got them kicked out of the bar. There's even risk that they would get 86'd from the bar, which means they permanently cannot return, right? And that also basically inhibits those other men from being able to socialize in the manner in which they are inclined. So what ends up happening is that all these men end up giving to one another. They will shove their giving down the throat of the irresponsible man, criticize him, give him unsolicited advice, unsolicited life advice to improve him. That's how that works. However, in female space, that is not how that works. Female space is a culture of taking, not giving. Okay? Because in female space, unsolicited advice is not welcome. If you notice this about women because of how pragmatic they are, they do not give each other unsolicited advice unless they're being very mean and disrespectful and actually going out of their way to hurt another woman, basically, by giving her unsolicited advice. Because getting unsolicited advice as a woman is actually extremely embarrassing, to the point that a woman psychologically barely has enough space in her head to receive unsolicited advice from anyone. Well, guess what? That's enough space in her head just for the man in her life. He is the one who is in the position, the man that she's in a sexual relationship with, he is the one who is in a position, as he has authority over her, to give her the benefit of male space and male behavior, which is to give that woman unsolicited advice. And he will. Because men have this thing when it comes to women. They know what women need. They know what women want, even more than the women themselves know what they need and what they want. So they will give unsolicited advice. And yeah, that unsolicited advice will hurt. It will hurt them and they will feel hurt. But it's for their benefit. And with it being for their benefit, this is how male idealism actually is being idealistic with their woman, by being able and having the position of authority in her life such that they are able to explain, okay? They're able to explain, where she's fucking up or where there's a big problem or whatever. I actually told a woman one time in my life that, and it was unsolicited advice. I'm like, you are very unhospitable. You suck at hospitality. You should change. And here's how I recommend you change so that you can improve your hospitality. She was extremely hurt by hearing this information. But then as the day went on, she's like, yeah, you're right. I am not hospitable. This is the kind of woman that, if people would come over to my home, she wouldn't offer them a place to sit. She would not offer them something to drink. She would not offer them something to eat. From a male perspective, this is just pretty basic. This is a basic result that comes as a result of... Sorry, I'm doing some double talking, a little rambly here. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm high on nicotine right now. But the point is, men have these general expectations of women and their behavior, which is a lot, very culturally nuanced and culturally influenced, such that they expect women to know these things. Like a woman who is in a relationship or a wife should behave like it by being hospitable, right? This is very normal for the United States of America for men to have this expectation of a woman. And some women just don't do it. Frankly, it's oftentimes UD women who lack in hospitality. And it's the SD women who understand it, basically as a default, right? But if a woman doesn't have female friends or female relationships in her life, that's a huge turnoff. That's a huge red flag to men. Why? Because it means she's going to have a lot of holes. A lot of holes. For example, this woman who's not very hospitable, she doesn't understand hospitality in a home, that's a hole. She is lacking something, basically. Now, how female space works is this. Women are supposed to be around other women, and women, using their solipsism, which is their innate, selfish entitlement, are supposed to use their solipsism, their entitlement, their selfishness, to look at what other women have, compare themselves to those women, and find out what they are lacking. What this ends up happening is this creates a desire. This is also a potential for criticism, because a woman needs to get to a point where she's not lacking anything in terms of a female. And because she's not lacking anything as a female, her man is not at risk of criticizing her. Because if you as a woman and you're in a sexual relationship and your man criticizes you for something that you have lacked, you have failed. You have failed as a woman. And it gets even worse if you don't have female relationships because you're not able to improve. Because what female space does, other than creating a culture of accountability, it also gives an environment where women can improve. This is why female space is known as stitch and bitch. This is where female space, where this old adage comes from, which is, men do and women talk, basically. Why do they talk? They talk because they're basically answering questions from other women, okay? And these questions are crafted in such a way where those women are actually able to gain a benefit, right? Look at how female friendships happen. Look at where camaraderie is. A woman has to be conscious. She has to learn how to be conscious about what she is lacking as a woman. She needs to become conscious of it. Now, she can be self-conscious of it, which is a form of self-criticism, or other people in her life, particularly her man, will be conscious of it and inform her, and then offer unsolicited advice, which would actually be very painful to her, and she'd probably feel hurt as a result. So a woman needs to always be acutely aware of her need to, are currently aware of her holes, basically, what holes need to be filled, where she is lacking as a woman. And she needs to take responsibility for that self-awareness and her self-consciousness. And she needs to be self-conscious about how she might be lacking. Here's an example of a woman who is lacking. If she's fat, fat women are lacking. They're lacking. In the eyes of men, they're lacking. They should probably take responsibility for their health and beauty. I mean, what's the point? Men are attracted to beautiful women because it tells men that those beautiful, healthy, fit, not fat women are women who take care of themselves. And if they can take care of themselves, that signals to a man that she can take care of children and she can take care of him. Because remember, women were created for men, not the other way around, and not equally. That is false, because it is written, "It is not good for man to be alone. Therefore I will create a helper who is suitable unto him." And that's where we get women. And the woman was formed out of a rib, right? So each woman, especially in a polygynous relationship, each woman represents a rib that comes off of the spine of the man, essentially. She is a rib, right? All of his women are ribs, basically. Female space. Female space is important because it's a space of taking. If a woman becomes aware of what she's lacking, either because other women are telling her, or because, the women close to her in her life, like sisters, mother, grandmother, aunts, these women, sister wives, these women, right? These are usually in the positions of some semblance of authority to girls, and then that's why oftentimes they end up offering unsolicited advice and kind of acting like men with those younger women who are having these struggles because they're lacking, right? And they take on the role of a man. Better to have that happen than when your actual man comes up to you and is like, "Hey, you're lacking this area, you need to fix it." And then they feel hurt. It hurts their female pride. And that's the point. It hurts their female pride. Now, what do you do, especially when you have UDPF women? They all do this. It's really frustrating, actually. It's one of my biggest frustrations with UDPF women from an Octagram perspective, unconscious developed perceiving females. Their issue is that they feel so much pressure that they would have to give back after they take. But that's not how female space works mechanically. It is not how it works. And as a result, because it doesn't work that way, guess what? How it actually works, they don't need to be afraid. Women need to give themselves permission to be takers of other women. Because a woman's value to other women is actually based on what she has to offer. And all women have something to offer to other women. They always have something to offer. Sometimes they're just not conscious of it. Let's say there's a woman who's hyper invested in utility, but she really sucks at the health and beauty area. Maybe she has homeless hair all the time. She doesn't know how to do her makeup. She doesn't know how to dress herself. She doesn't know how to take care of herself, and she ends up having just becoming physically unattractive to her man, for example. Or what if there's a woman who's completely invested in the opposite? She's a health and beauty master, but she has no concept of utility, right? This happens all the time. This is extremely common. So what these women need to do is they need to go to female space. And as a result of them being conscious of what they themselves are missing as women, they need to humble themselves and ask the other woman who has what they lack, hey, how did you do that? Hey, how did you do your makeup that way? I actually watched this happen with CK recently. There was a girl at the gym who came up to her. She saw CK. CK was wearing her... CK's been working on her body, working very hard. I mean, she's become objectively beautiful, CK has. And she's been working on her physique consistently to the point where she's bombshell status as a woman. This is her developing her maiden archetype. Well, this girl comes up to her and is like, I really like your outfit, right? And this woman, how she was dressed, well, she was dressed terribly. Let's be honest. And then CK has the opportunity to offer something and be like, oh yeah, I got my outfit here, here, and here, and I wear this outfit on this day because I'm doing legs today, but if I'm doing a different muscle group, I might wear something else. Gives her opportunity to offer something back to the girl that initiated her. That girl was aware of something that she was lacking, and it may not even have been about CK's outfit. Her actual interest may have been she wanted to get advice from CK about how to improve her physique, for example, which is likely what it was. But she wanted to establish rapport with CK by asking CK, some basic questions at first to see if CK will offer to her, answers. And then she could ask more questions leading to more answers, especially when it comes to deep, sensitive stuff like, well, I want to have a physique like yours. What do I have to do to get to it, right? Benjamin Franklin made a statement a long time ago, and this is very important. And this statement is, and I've said it before on this YouTube channel or on the podcast, Benjamin Franklin said, it's when you ask somebody for a favor, they're more likely to do you another favor later. This is the law of female space. This is how it actually works. This is the law of female space. But because female space is basically broken down in the United States of America and most other feminist nations in the world, especially and including South Korea, for example, because female space is basically broken down, women are not really having relationships with women. They're not able to gain these benefits because female space is all about solicited advice. And that girl was soliciting advice from my wife, CK. That's what she was doing. She was soliciting advice. And this needs to be understood. This needs to be, you ladies got to see this. And this is how all of your friendships are basically structured from a camaraderie perspective. So you could talk about envy, right? This is a healthy use of envy. A girl envies what another woman has and she wants it too. That's envy, right? So she uses her envy in a healthy manner and basically takes the position of taker, and she goes right up to the woman and asks, hey, how do you do your makeup like that? Or, hey, how do you have your hair like that, right? So that's important. That's extremely important. It's critical. So as a result of that, something happens. You know what happens to, so because a lot of the UDPF girls will make the argument, well, I don't want to do that because then I'd be expected to give and I don't know what to give. That's not the point. That's not the point. Who cares if you get anything? You need to be a taker. You need to go up to the woman and ask her how she did XYZ thing so that you can have the opportunity to learn something and gain the thing that she has, and your envy will be satisfied, and then you will be a better woman for it. There's even other ways of doing it, which is like, someone told me you give really good blowjobs, how do you do it? Stuff like that, okay? But here's what ends up happening, is that when a girl asks another girl and solicits the advice of that other girl, do you know what happens? This is where female pride comes into play, because the woman is very prideful that someone would notice that she has something that this other person is lacking, and then she feels flattered that someone is asking her how she did it or how she achieved it or how she obtained it, because it makes her feel valuable. And it increases, it's like a huge ego boost for girls. So you UDPF women out there who are avoiding female relationships, because I've noticed UDPF women avoid female relationships the most, and they need to stop, and it's annoying. UD women do it consistently. SD women don't, but UD women absolutely do, and it's really frustrating. These impulsive women, they avoid female relationships. Oftentimes it has a lot to do with avoiding judgment, but little do they know, this is how UD women end up guaranteeing that they're going to have healthy relationships with fellow women, specifically for asking how a woman did XYZ thing so they can have it for themselves, because that tells the woman from an ego boost perspective that she has a lot to offer. And a woman having a lot to offer fellow women, as well as her man having a lot to offer, is, frankly, the most valuable woman. This is how women, over time, actually increase each other's value. So what the woman being solicited advice for, what she's being asked, the woman who's being asked is getting an ego boost. And the woman who is taking the position of taker by doing the asking and soliciting the advice is gaining the benefit of possibly getting the answers to her questions to make her a better woman, which increases her value, and thus she herself has more to offer, okay? It bothers the ever-loving shit out of me that women do not understand these psychological concepts or understand the female psyche at all. This is why you cannot ask a woman for advice on women. Female space is ultimately dead. And it's really annoying. It's really frustrating. And frankly, it needs to stop. It needs to stop. It's stupid. So what they have to do is that they have to get to the point, you need to be a taker, but you do it in humility, because just you doing the action, UDPF women, they really struggle with pride, by the way. They really struggle with humbling themselves. They need to humble themselves to put themselves in the position of taker, because they're basically exchanging their own personal humility in exchange for the answers that they're looking for to get what the other woman has, so that she is able to fill a hole, fill a need, fill a desire within herself, so that she can improve herself, right? It all comes down to humility. But then because she's taking on that role of humility in that moment, what ends up happening is that the other woman being asked gets to take on the role of pride. And she gets an ego boost as a result of that situation, right? This is how that works, okay? So, female space, from that point of view, ends up becoming something that is beneficial to all women. This is why a woman not having female friends tells a man the following. It tells the man that she's prideful. Ooh, that's not wife material. It tells a man that she's prideful. It also tells a man that she is not going to be able to increase her quality as a woman, which means he's going to have to fill the holes, the things that she is lacking as a woman. And that's really stressful on a man. That too is a big problem. So as a result of that, it's a big red flag. And this makes it very difficult for men to actually commit to women. Makes it very difficult. And that's what we're trying to prevent. If you want to learn more about Octagram dynamics and these concepts, especially about men and women, because finally, from a psychological perspective, we're able to explain gender such that in explaining gender, and we're the only group in the world that does it. We are the only one that actually factors in gender when it comes to personality typing and Jungian analytical psychology. We're able to actually do this. Now, women can gain the benefit of female space. Now they have the opportunity to restore female space. Now, women understand how they can utilize female space from a self-serving perspective, which is if they're lacking anything, they can gain it and improve, or they can get an ego boost, depending on whether or not they're the woman who has a lot to offer. Okay, it comes down to all of those things, right? This is the point. Learn more about Octagram in my Skool community at skool.com/CS Joseph, SKOOL. $29 a month. It's not hard. But that's the point, folks. Like, you need to identify your Octagram, ladies. You need to understand if you have been investing so much in being the woman who has a lot to offer fellow women, or maybe your man. Because guess what? Like, if you're a taker in female space and taking from other women and soliciting advice, and you're improving yourself and gaining from those other women while simultaneously giving them an ego boost, you end up increasing your value, and then you become the woman who has a lot to offer, especially your man. And like I said, this is why it's such a red flag for a woman to not have healthy relationships with women. Okay? And men understand this because men know that a woman who does not have healthy relationships with other women, that woman is going to be a burden on him. And as a result, he's not going to commit to her. If you would like to prevent that outcome, you need to be investing in your female relationships. The problem is that society ends up teaching this whole you can have it all prideful perspective through feminism to women in general, to the point where women start believing that they can put their faith into money instead of female space. And that is actually completely and utterly false. That is a big problem. A very big problem. And oftentimes men end up having to compete with women's ability to get money instead of dealing with a woman who is able to exercise the humility required to ask fellow women and solicit their advice in a self-serving perspective. And then you have the UD women who are like, oh, I'm not, they're super prideful and they don't want to humble themselves and put themselves in that position. And it's really, really frustrating. It's like, stop behaving that way. You're actually harming your attractiveness to men because you have this big red flag. It's one of the biggest red flags. I'd say it's probably top 3 in terms of red flags. Sexual history is the number 1 flag, but this one might be number 2 or number 3. Women need to have healthy relationships with women. Women need to be able to take from other women, and they need to be able to offer things to other women. And the highest valued women, the most valuable woman, is the woman who has a lot to offer. Ladies, look at yourselves. You know deep down if you have a lot to offer. But if you don't have a lot to offer, that means you're a low value woman. Okay? If you want to increase your quality, you need to go out of your way. You need to go out of your way to have a lot to offer your fellow women. Because if you have a lot to offer your fellow women, guess what happens? You have a lot to offer to your man. And it will make it so much easier for you to secure his commitment. Even though men in general these days, the vast majority of men are not willing to commit. Okay? This is one of the ways that you could utilize to solve your problems. Okay? So I think I hammered this pretty well in a nice little 40-minute lecture. Probably get cut down. But oh well. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening, folks. And I'll see you guys on the next video.